King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Here we are, episode 160 of The Broadcasters Podcast. Tonight, we are going to continue our discussion of the celebrity versus influencer feud that is ongoing right now post-pandemic, because it is a fascinating subject and a number of stories really tell the story. So let's go ahead and talk about it. As I title, corporate controlled celebrities criticized for hypocrisy while digital influencers dominate. So let's explain really quickly what I'm talking about and why it's so important for content creators like yourselves, why you need to go and make sure to look at the distinction and what's happening here. Because the influencer culture is becoming much more popular because we're starting to see, really, it's like, you know, the face that we used to get that was hidden of what real celebrities are and all the things that are going on in terms of what celebrities meant to everyday people. It's changing when everyday people now can become stars. This is the year where you're seeing that true transfer over. It did start somewhat a little bit when you had social media begin, almost a decade ago. Well, actually, more than 2007. Not so much. But really, when you get into this decade, the 2010s, and then you really get into the end of the 2010s, 2018, 2019 to now, you see influencers now encompassing everything that has to do with culture of how people market products, how people are entertained, how they are, they engage with who they want to engage with. It's very important. The community, they talk about the story, and they mention how the marketing has changed for influencer culture versus celebrity culture. Short story, but here's what they did say. So celebrity endorsement has been a marketing mainstay since the 1800s, but as more and more of their target audiences use social media to make their purchasing decisions, companies are turning to social media influencers rather than traditional celebrity spokespersons to promote their brand. And we know there's a whole lot of red tape when it comes to how much a celebrity will desire or what will be requested of by their agent, their publicity, their management. So there's a lot of people that are controlling what the celebrity is going to get. But one of the thoughts that is being brought into play, which I can understand the argument, is when I've talked to some people within the cannabis industry. When they're working with celebrities, the celebrity's going to come in, they're going to do their job, they're going to do what they're supposed to do, in and out. So they're going to be professionals about it. And yes, in many cases, you're going to have influencers that are not professionally sound to go ahead and handle things. But again, it's the price, and it's also the exposure and the appeal that you get. So there's a lot of publicity people now, a lot of people in management and talent agencies that are looking to go and bring these influencers and try to craft them into somebody they can make into somebody popular or somebody that can become the next celebrity, because the crop of celebrities are coming from online. We see that more and more every day. Now, celebrities have a following because of their achievements, such as starring in a long-running TV series, having a hit song, or winning a gold medal. Influencers gain a following through their expertise on a particular subject and ability to engage with their audience. Celebrities find fame by appealing to a very broad audience. Influencers earn their reputations by targeting a narrow demographic niche. In addition, people tend to idolize celebrities, while influencers try to present themselves as relatable, real people. Well, I think that trend is starting to change. I think influencers are getting stand now. We see it more and more. Influencers rely on the content of their posts to appeal to their audience, while celebrities leverage their fame and personality. But remember, that changed with the pandemic because of the approach that celebrities had to be able to look so amazing and spectacular. Makeup, clothing, fashion, what they were able to do, where they could go. Like all that has been contained. All those opportunities that the celebrities had before, those are gone. But if they have it in a time of pandemic, then that's a different story. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But let me finish up real quick. Now, influencers are winning, and this is what I'm talking about as well. This ability to interact and engage with a specialized audience on a personal, relatable level is what's driving the rise of influencer marketing, because they know their audience. The influencer's experience can be invaluable when creating targeted content. Likewise, building a relationship with an influencer usually doesn't entail the kind of financial investment or risk that comes with a celebrity spokesperson. So again, professional, on time, getting the job done, but then the price you have to pay to all the people that will manage that person's schedule, manage that person's image and what they're doing. Like that, there's a price to that, and that's a justifiable price, I think, in many cases. But really, look at how we're getting right now, where influencers might not have to do so much. Plus, you have celebrities that have turned influencers because the celebrity spokesperson era is not over yet, but we're starting to see a lot of things that are happening. So celebrities appeal to a much broader demographic audience than influencers do. Selena Gomez, Kim Kardashian have shown it's possible to be both a celebrity and an influencer. Well, here's the question. When Kim Kardashian does no longer have the Keeping With the Kardashians show at the end of this year, the final season's coming up, and, she needs to continue to go and bring herself out there and do her products. Now, she's not hurting. Obviously, they're a $1 billion family. But the question is, how much can she keep up that level of stardom that she had at that point? Because again, that stardom fades away. And the same thing goes for influencers. But again, the level of drop for an influencer versus a celebrity is much less a drop. Because a celebrity has to take a real drop. And when you have that broad audience that's going to ask you, where have you been? You're washed up. You're has-been. Influencers, they come and go. Now, some of them will find a way to go ahead and be an entrepreneur and find ways to work other things. Again, the influencers, I believe, they're not just looking for the stardom to become a celebrity. Influencers are looking to make money. So influencers have a different narrative, a different agenda altogether. That's how I think about things. But now, again, when you look at where celebrities are and their stance, they're standing right now when it comes to post-pandemic, there's a lot of complaints about it. There's a story from BBC.com that really focused on this. And this just came out as I record tonight here, April 1st, April Fool's Night. Celebrities in Australia anger stranded citizens over the double standard. Here's the story, and this is very important. So, it's a lot of things being said here about how people are upset because, again, celebrities handled COVID very badly. A lot of hypocrisy and a lot of this kumbaya, we're all in this together kind of stuff that people hated, really hated. So let's talk about it. So in the story, first Zac Efron showed up in Australia. Then Mark Wahlberg. Matt Damon jetted in, and dozens of other celebrities followed, all to set up temporary homes in Australia. More recently, Julia Roberts. She's due to film a movie here with George Clooney later this year, aptly titled Ticket to Paradise. But because amid the pandemic, it does appear that half of Hollywood has fled to Australia, viewing it as a COVID-free idol. Life is good in a country that's largely eliminated the virus. People are freely enjoying beaches, bars, and nightclubs. So that's what's going on. Remember, with California and New York being locked down as much as it did, the celebrities didn't stay around. No, they left their $1 million homes, and they were able to go ahead and make their way to Australia, of all places. How about that? Most of the famous survivors are here to work. Australia's government has lured over productions like the next Thor film with tax breaks. Look at what we're doing right here, okay? Yeah, they might be working, but again, they're getting away, and, the kind of tax or the revenue that would be done for movies being produced in Hollywood, they didn't wait. They're going to keep making money. Again, they have to work. I don't deny the fact they have to work. But again, I can understand what this story is talking about, the hypocrisy behind it. Now, but there's others that are not that way. Let's talk about it. There's been a bonanza of celebrity sightings, particularly in Sydney. Idris Elba showing up on a concert stage, Natalie Portman buying groceries in Bondi, Chris Pratt partying in a hotel, and Zac Efron lunching at a Korean barbecue restaurant in Chinatown. Plus, visitors making their way into Australia have included Aquafina, Ed Sheeran, Jane Seymour, Melissa McCarthy, Michelle Yee, Paul Mescal, Rita Ora, Ron Howard, Taika Waititi, Tessa Thompson, Tilda Swinton, Tom Hanks, and Lord Alan Sugar. And then there's Australian stars that are also over there in the land down under. Nicole Kidman, Keith Urban, Kylie and Danny Minogue, Rose Byrne, Isla Fisher, and Sacha Baron Cohen joining Isla Fisher. They're calling it Aussiewood, one local entertainment reporter told the BBC. But not everyone is pleased. One year on since Australia shut its borders, there are still 40,000 Australians stranded overseas, and they've been effectively been blocked from returning home. One has lodged a human rights complaint with the United Nations. So why is this happening, they say? Well, Australia's border restrictions have effectively priced out many nationals from flying home. So the price, so only the very top celebrities with the kind of money that all these celebrities have can make the flight to Australia. So the government last year imposed a travel cap on international arrivals, aiming at just reducing the risk of outbreaks. So flights to Australia are reduced to just carrying 40 passengers. So it's basically, they're not taking commercial flights, or if they're taking commercial flights, it's basically all these celebrities are taking private flights because they're limited in capacity. There's no one in the flights. So no problem with them making the way down here. The flights from the UK to Australia can cost between $3,000 Australian or 1,700 euros and 15,000 Australian dollars, forcing many to draw on savings and even pension funds. Then there's the mandatory hotel quarantine fee on arrival, 3,000 Australian dollars per person. So it's catering to only very rich people and the celebrities that are coming to make their way. So they go into the story about the people that are being affected and being isolated where they cannot make their way through. So critics argue the government has adopted more flexible prices for A-listers. The government has had the travel cap in January, citing the threat of the UK variant, but days later it allowed more than 1,700 players, staff, and others tied to the Australian Open, prioritizing a tennis tournament over their own citizens, says one person. Then hotel quarantine is a requirement for all, but many stars have received exemptions. Julia Roberts and Ed Sheeran holed up together to quarantine on a luxurious ranch outside of Sydney. Matt Damon, Nicole Kidman, and Danny Minogue also approved for private quarantines. The celebs are in their private mansions, says Andrew Hornery, a Sydney Morning Herald gossip reporter. Quote, it's a very different scenario than being cramped in a 4-star hotel overlooking a freeway. It's pretty funny. There's a 100% different treatment for the rich or famous compared to ordinary people, says Kanisha Batty, an Australian woman who was granted a UK visa extension. She joked that deportation may be her quickest way home. Wow. That right there can just piss people off. And these are all these stars that we all really appreciate. You know what? We haven't seen them around in a while, and they're just going along, and, they don't care what's going on in their own country. They just, we're going to leave. We're just going to go somewhere else. We can go live, in our homes and in other countries. And that's, again, hypocrisy by the celebrity. And why do you think celebrities are getting hated more and not being as appreciated as much? Because things like this. And that's not good. But that's where things are right now. That's a fascinating story. And that tells you stories like that, which are accurate, that just tells you influencers have the edge right now. Another story that came out from Insider.com, thought this was quite interesting. They talk about celebrities that were partying amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So this story came from a few weeks ago, but another story that is just bashing the celebrities out here. So they go ahead and list 45 influencers and celebrities partying hard during the pandemic, flouting public health guidelines. So let's go ahead and look at what's going on here. So it's not completely off, but again, we're talking about influencers and celebrities, which some already have celebrity status because of other things that we're doing. So I want to make that point across. Some of these people they call influencers, they have some celebrity status. They have status already. They were not just introduced to people only online. They have some kind of celebrity behind them. So this is a little bit, I guess the best word is, it's a little tricky on how they're trying to word this here. It's a little convoluted, but we're going to go into it. So for celebrities and influencers, social gatherings were still a major part of the equation. Throughout the pandemic, many such people who chose to party despite public health guidelines faced backlash from their followers and fans. Many apologized and continued partying. So here are the 45 we have right now. Tana Mongeau, who is a YouTuber, that's one. They've counted with her 14 parties she's attended over the pandemic and other smaller gatherings. There's more to say about that. Kylie Jenner. Listen, you might want to say influencer, but she's celebrity. She's keeping up with the Kardashians. She has all her product line. She's a celebrity as far as I'm concerned. And she's been featured in videos and other things, so no. Influencer, yes, but she's an influencer from her celebrity. Let's just point that out. She's appeared to throw or attend 12 parties during the pandemic, having her own birthday party at Nobu and sister Khloe Kardashian's birthday at her home. And she was also photographed leaving Justin and Hailey Bieber's house party in August. And Just Jenner reported that she attended photographer Brian Eslava's dinner party in September with other influencers. High Snobiety wrote that Jenner attended Cardi B's Las Vegas birthday party in October, getting backlash for its lack of social distancing and masks, and Jenner appeared to go out on clubbing at least 2 occasions. Then the princess-themed third birthday for her daughter Stormi on February 3rd that she discussed in a YouTube video. Then you have Scott Disick's birthday in May, which Kim Kardashian posted about on Instagram, a pool party at her house in June, Vulture reported, and attended Tristan Thompson's 4th of July party, according to People. Also attended her sister Kendall Jenner's Halloween party, which she posted about on Instagram. So the Kardashians and Jenners, most of whom are on this list, have defended their maskless partying lifestyle throughout the pandemic, saying they have gotten rapid tests done before every event. So they're trying to say, hey, look, we're trying to still be cognizant of what we're doing. But again, the hypocrisy stands out. Jake Paul, who is a YouTuber, and it was definitely an influencer, but now has gotten really quite a bit of a celebrity status because of his stuff. His brother Logan really obviously has gotten more of the thing, but he's also a boxer. So he's gotten his way into the sports world as a result of his YouTube. So he's become celebrity of his own. Now, he has attended 12 parties, also hosting one himself at the Team 10 mansion in Calabasas. Let's move along here. There's Kendall Jenner we just talked about. She was at 5 parties. Charli D'Amelio, who's best known for TikTok, she has also attended several parties, and also despite urging fans to stay home and not spread COVID-19. But she's becoming a celebrity. She's in the TikTok house. She's now got her own cold foam brew drink for Dunkin' Donuts now. That's because of her. And, her sister Dixie's now doing music. And we're hearing a lot of things about the Hype House and the birthday parties and dinner parties and going to Addison Rae's dinner party in October, according to MTV. Again, there's a lot of the hypocrisy going there. But again, she's becoming celebrity. I mean, it's not even... All she's doing is just the dancing and just, the way she looked on camera. There was just an appeal to her, and now here we go. Also, her family, and her close friends were spotted in the Bahamas in December while the coronavirus continued to rapidly spread in their city of LA. Nikita Dragon is another one. She's a beauty guru. So there's one that comes out there. But again, these are the high-end influencers as well. Here for going on, Khloe Kardashian's on this list. Faze Banks, who's a YouTuber and gamer, is also on this list. Winnie Harlow, who's a model, well, I would necessarily say has gotten some status from being on other areas and products and all. And again, all the parties are going to Lakers championship party, Tiana Taylor's album listening party, so many others. And again, other artists are there. Kehlani, Future, Missy Elliott, Miss Lauryn Hill, and Lena Waithe. Bryce Hall is part of this list. He's also from TikTok. And that was he was the one that actually had the issue where the mayor of LA turned off his electricity at a party that he had over 100 guests at. Dixie D'Amelio is part of this list. Megan Thee Stallion, the rapper, had a Halloween party, a huge one at Atlanta strip club. Cardi B's birthday party, a video she put of herself. She was at an event, Mary J. Blige's yacht in September. And also went to a Hollywood party hosted by Kylie Jenner. Then you have Mulatto, who's a rapper. She met, kind of got some note for TikTok and other things. And she had a listening party for her new record. Also had a birthday party in December. Big public events. Diplo, the DJ, also doing events. Cardi B and Offset have done events. And they have thrown their own parties and have been at events. Trey Songz, who's the R&B singer, also doing things. Avani Gregg, who's a TikToker. Taylor Holt. Again, there's just a list that goes on. And that's what goes on here. So the hypocrisy is there. And this is the high end of influencers. So this is not all influencers. Because there's many that are not as big as this. They're micro-influencers. The macro-influencers, the ones that are like the celebrities, looking for that broad-based audience, that's a different story. Right? But again, the hypocrisy stands out. And because of the mistakes of them, the large and in charge, the A-list influencers and A-list celebrities, this is what they're doing. And that opens the door for influencers like everybody else to dominate and come into the play, because they're not going to get caught up in all that, because they don't have that spotlight on them as much as others. That's what's important. And there's a whole thing about this. You want to look at the rest of the list? I got it listed in the part right here, so go and take a look for yourselves. And I guess what it comes down to it, you just have to take a whole note of the fact that, I mean, celebrities are struggling right now. I mean, there's still a lack of how many studios are open right now and sets. I mean, we're hearing about a number of places in California that are starting to get offices back open again. You know, the agencies, everything with the strikes, all the things that are going on is still a big mess in Hollywood and in New York. And the one thing we're just getting to now is the movie theaters are starting to come back up in terms of Regal Cinemas opening back up their theaters nationwide. So finally I can go back to the movies again. I've been looking forward to that. It's been a long time coming, but, you know, we're just waiting around, and I'm hoping we get somewhere with it. But either which way, let's go ahead and move along here and talk about some of the stories when it comes to the journalism side of where traditional journalism has had a lot of issues. And now, you know, the outcry and the hypocrisy on them in some cases is starting to stand out once again. Now, hypocrisy, I wouldn't say so much because of the fact that, well, there is a bit, because instead of reporting accurate, when some people decide to become opinion writers, and they're doing things where they are causing fear, anger, and a complete 180 of what the news is supposed to be. Well, you know, there's got to be one thing that's got to be said about your editors, your publishers, and the people that are your news directors that are being controlled by puppet strings by their corporate giants, being told as to what they're supposed to be able to do with the news. And so for the stories we're going to talk about right now, in the story from Neiman Lab, this is important. You're going to ask yourself, you know, if you're not pushing back on the things you're being made to do, or if you want to do this, you have to know the consequences for this. So let's go into the story here. There's a story they put up called When the Mob Comes. Quote, in believing it can't happen to them, they believe on some level that you deserve what you are getting, but the reality is it can happen to anyone. So the story comes here from Liz Lenz. And to give a little background on Liz, she's an author, writer, and editor. And she is published in publications including the Columbia Journalism Review, Washington Post, and the Gazette. So let's talk about this real quick. So she's talking about the online mob coming after her. She was live tuning a caucus experience writing for Vice during the realignment period of the caucuses. Martin O'Malley people were sitting ducks during the process. Things got tense between the Sanders and Clinton supporters. A Sanders supporter yelled at me that I was voting with my vagina. So America's voted with its dick for the past 240 years, I said. And then she tweeted part of that exchange. And the tweet got picked up by national news outlets and became the center of a social media storm. In the middle of the usual, you're an ugly bitch, no one will even rape you kind of stuff, I received DMs telling me that I should die from cancer because my kids would be better off without me. And she got emails saying my kids were going to be taken away. And then she put a story out profiling a 2018 Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson, or host. She was prepared for what happened in the previous 2 years. She got internet hate a lot and trolling as a result for her work, and told I look like a horse face, a drawer full of dildos, and a house full of cats. When I worked at AOL, I read an entire comment thread dedicating to analyzing why I spelled my name the way I did. The conclusion, my parents didn't love me and I needed attention, which fair. I'd even gotten a couple of anonymous handwritten letters to my home that were just Bible verses written out on plain white paper. What happened next, my phone exploded. My Google number, which I used almost exclusively then, was doxxed, and I got message after message of alt-right memes, Facebook messages, Twitter, Instagram messages, comments, emails, so many emails. For a year, it didn't end. Anytime I wrote something, the internet would regurgitate threats like a cow chewing a vicious cud. She also wrote about Richard Spencer's divorce and how I was never cooking for a man again. And if people hated me before, they loathe me now. Locked down my Facebook, she had to. Ditched her Google Voice number, it didn't help. And then, wow, this is a lot of stuff. Then she was sitting at her co-working space, rocking her friend's baby in her little carrier, crying as I read tweet after tweet calling me ugly, worthless, a cunt, Photoshop pictures of Pepe the Frog raping me, and worse, so much worse. Then there were internet jokes mobbed. Once how a man unmatched you on a dating service. What's he hiding? The truth was, I didn't even remember his name. It was a stupid joke. The internet is still not over it. Screenshots float up every once in a while on my DMs. Did you say this? The implication is somehow that I doxed a poor innocent man. That never happened, but the truth doesn't matter. Then there was also September 2019. She co-hosted the LGBTQ forum, and Joe Biden called me, quote, a real sweetheart, end quote. Then she got bomb threats, she says. Now, people sometimes ask me, she says, why I got bomb threats, which is a ridiculous question. I don't know. Ask why why they send bomb threats and how I can answer that as if something I could ever deserve a threat to my life. Now, she says this. The reality is what gets you on the radar of the mob is nothing. A tweet, a joke, a comment, just existing as a woman, a person of color, a woman of color, doing your job and doing it well. But, Liz, what I'm noticing is the fact that you're doing a lot of opinion. And with the internet, yes, everybody is a keyboard warrior. You're absolutely correct. You're dealing with politics, which, I'm sorry, politics is just, it's a dirty, filthy game. I don't talk politics. As I've said earlier this year, I did a resolution where I said I am withdrawing myself from any news or politics. I'm not watching any of it. And I don't. And I'll tell you, I'm surprised. I can still be quite informed with a lot of different things, but not watching network or cable news, not reading newspapers, none of it. Not at all. I don't need most of that because I've gotten to the point where news isn't news anymore. We know that now. You are not getting the news from your anchors, from even in the local news. It's not so much the local news is being controlled, but it's the fact that they're corporate entities that run these stations. They're having to run network programming that is going to have a bias, or they're going to run something from their own company that will have a bias into it. Not a bias of a political bias, but a bias in terms of keeping people scared, keeping people angered, keeping people frustrated and outraged, and not just telling the news like it is. Because nobody is. But see, I'm not saying any more about that. You know, again, free speech, freedom of thought, you know, some people might say it's under siege. I don't know. But I'm fine. Listen, I just stay out of it. I just stay out of that kind of talk. Because right now, it's all toxic. All of that's toxic. News, politics, all of it. Current, things like that. No. Now, there are certain things that I talk about that are somewhat in the realm that some political types will go ahead and comment on. Okay, on one of my podcasting series, I did go and do a story about Eminem and the issue that he had with the cancel culture trying to go after him. And I did go ahead and talk about Lil Nas X and his Satan shoes and the video for Montero, right? I've talked about that. But again, that's just commentary because it was just a different side of the commentary. But again, I'm not going after the whole religious route. I'm not trying to go ahead and cancel anybody. That's not my part. I mean, that's part of the whole that's going on. And for me, I mean, you thought we were desensitized on things now. Trust me, a lot of people are desensitized about all this. Do you think people get tired of being scared? Oh, variants and spiking coronavirus cases again? So we're getting all that again. You know why? Because the news needs something to talk about. Now, I'm not going to completely say it's not important. I mean, no, look, I went and got my vaccination yesterday. I got the 1-dose Johnson & Johnson. I'm doing that. I'm continuing to do all the measurements I'm supposed to do, whether I'm here in front of this microphone, when I'm working, and I'm doing my Uber. On the weekends, I'm still doing what I need to do to keep myself safe. I'm still practicing what I did at the very beginning of this pandemic. So that's not on me. But again, I can understand where people are just getting tired of it. We've been through this for a year. How much longer people can go and last? And how much longer can you continue to go ahead and scare people and fearmonger? That is too much. So the outcry that's going on here for Liz is wrong in so many levels. But again, you have to ask yourself, when you're getting yourself into politics, and then also asking yourself, do you understand the people that you are getting attacked by? I mean, there are a lot of everyday people. Again, this is also the worst of people that are doing this, deciding to troll, deciding to also fearmonger, do the same thing. Then but again, they're attacking because of what you're saying. Okay? Cause and effect. So what you're causing with what you're writing has created this effect. It's not right. But then again, you got to ask yourself, what caused the mob to get provoked? Ask yourself that question. Because that's not the question being answered here on this story. Again, you're detailing all the things that happened to you. Sorry, that sucks. Okay? It sucks this all happened to you. But again, go back to why. Go back to the original. You didn't have this for most of your life before you became a journalist, before you had to work for certain publications. Did they influence you to do certain things, to write certain things? Okay? Were there certain things you would prefer to write about, and then you can't? Or now, because of what you had to write, you have become a target. And then the other thing I'd have to ask as well, more than anything else here, Liz, where are the people that are supposed to be defending you in the newspaper, in these publications, in these websites? Where are your publishers and editors-in-chief coming to defend you? Because I don't hear anything like that. Where are they? Why aren't they talking for you? Why are you defending yourself by yourself? I don't hear you. Is it because you can't say anything? You don't want to say anything? Are you afraid of losing your job? Why don't you explain to me why you can't say anything about why this happened? Again, you're doing this on your own. You shouldn't have to have your family defend you on this. You shouldn't have to have lawyers or have, security around for you, anything like that. Where are your bosses? Okay? You are writing for somebody. This is not on your own, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, because the responsibility of what's going on here, of course, has to go ahead towards the people that are attacking you, that are making all the messages to you. Yeah, but it all goes back to, where is your defense? Where's the security? Where are the things being done to protect the journalists like you? If you got to go and take fire for what you're going to say, where are they to protect you? No one's saying a thing about that. Yeah. But I'm not seeing anything here. Let me go on with the story here. There's much more she details here. And then she also talked to Talia Levin, author of Culture Warlords, and so much more. But again, I'm looking through the story, and I'm going through, and there is nothing at all that says anything. And listen, there are many different story writers and people getting attacked all the time. So when I was watching politics, I could name names of people that were constantly going to get attacked for what they were writing about. Charles Bullitt, New York Times. Kurt Eichenwald with Newsweek. Maggie Hamerman, New York Times. Okay? There are others just in the same way. Okay? Ben Smith, BuzzFeed. Just the whole point is, if they're getting attacked, where is the New York Times, the Washington Post? Where are all these newspapers coming to defend or be at the defense of these writers? Why are they getting attacked and nobody's helping them? Oh. Nobody's answering that question. That's what I'm talking about. So when you do not get the support of the people that are paying you, you're just getting a paycheck from them and not getting any real support, okay? Emotional, physical, any kind of support whatsoever to make sure you are protected as an asset to the newspaper or publication that you write for. We see now. Okay, nobody's saying anything about that. So anyway, you can read the rest of that story there. But now I'm going to talk about Substack. Because again, some writers, some journalists that have gone on and done other things where they did work for somebody else. And you know what? When their publication or whatever they did not want to help them, then guess what? They went on their own. And now they're taking the brunt of what they're doing right now on their own. But they're also taking the money they're getting for it. And they're probably getting what they deserve now. And they're getting to write the stories as they want. Taking a story from the Columbia Journalism Review about Substack. Substack is raising another $65 million in venture financing, giving the newsletter publishing platform a theoretical market of $650 million. 10 times what it was reportedly worth when it raised its first $15 million in its first round of financing in 2019. Which, like the latest round, was led by Silicon Valley investment firm Andreessen Horowitz. A blog post, the company wrote that they are going to use the money to expand its program of giving writers and journalists advances, which have to be earned back from their subscription revenues in order to allow them to quit their jobs and join the platform, as well as more fellowships, grants, mentoring programs, and other resources. So Substack is just taking advantage of the online, the ongoing fire that's going on that's being taken by these other journalists. So, Liz, you got to ask yourself, I know you're talking about, there are some people that talk about, they question and they criticize who is on Substack that is writing. But the truth is, you got to ask yourself, do you want to take this ongoing pressure of these corporate-owned publications that are not saving you or protecting you, or do you want to just go on your own because you might as well, because you're going to get as much support like you do from your publishers than you do by doing it by yourself? And it sounds like Substack's trying to support. It's not about anything with political. Take your politics aside, okay? Throw them aside. Talk about the fact you want to be able to write what you want to write, because it sounds like Substack's not holding back on that. And what's going on as well? Well, this might be coming up as handy as a war chest, because Facebook and Twitter have said they're getting into the newsletter business. Facebook recently said it will allow writers and journalists to create their own subscription newsletters with the platform's help, as well as landing pages, and it will be paying some of the writers in a pilot program. It won't charge them anything for its services, unlike Substack, taking a 10% cut of any revenue its authors are bringing in. See? Then Twitter, showing signs of wanting to move in on Substack's turf, they're acquiring a newsletter platform called Revenue, saying it plans to help users to sign up subscribers, and it only plans to charge a 5% fee. At the end of the day, can Substack create a community or platform or tool which is far and away better than anything Facebook and Twitter can build or copy? That's the question. So these are the kind of things you need to go ahead and concern yourself about when you see this, okay? I was going to read a story from Financial Times about this, but of course they put their paywall up, so screw them, as always. But that's quite an interesting story right now that's going on. So this is where we got, all right? The corporate hypocrisy is not just in the celebrities. It's also in the hypocrisy of the bettors, the people that are paying and compensating the people that are doing the talented work of entertaining, informing their audience. But of course, they don't think about that, do they? Now, one other story I want to go and wrap up with tonight in the radio realm, I think it's very important when it comes to everything that's going on in the world of radio, and I've taken a lot of time to go and talk about that in previous episodes recently. So one of the things I want to talk about here is a story that came up from a law website, a law firm. They talked about, this is from the law office of Gibson Dunn. That's who did this. And here's what I want to go and talk about. This is a story that regarding the Supreme Court. This was a decision that was made April 1st, 2021. This is FCC versus the Prometheus Radio Project and the National Association of Broadcasters versus the Prometheus Radio Project. Now, we've talked about this story before, where there was a ruling that was made today. The Supreme Court had officially announced with a 9-0 ruling, so unanimous, that the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, permissibly relaxed 3 decades-old rules limiting ownership of broadcast stations as part of its quadrennial regulatory review under Section 202H of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. That section says the FCC is required to review its media ownership rules every 4 years to repeal or modify any rule that is, quote, no longer necessary in the public interest as a result of competition. As we've talked about many times, the Telecommunications Act of 1986 has been a detriment. It has what's created the deregulation of so many different corporate companies. So the media has deregulated so much. A major overhaul of telecommunications. And that's what it was. So again, radio eliminated the cap. The cap for radio was limited on nationwide station ownership, increasing the number of stations one entity could own in a single market. And there's a story I could take back from futuremusic.org that talked about this back in 2002. The Future Music Coalition. And they put a study out that talked about this. And the radio study, they concluded the following. Each week, radio nearly reaches 95% of the U.S. population over the age of 12. And this is a fact that has continued to be published out by Nielsen Media Research on a regular basis. But as they said in this particular executive summary of this study in 2002, radio has changed drastically since the 1996 Telecommunications Act, and it sparked an unprecedented period of ownership consolidation in the industry with significant and adverse effects on musicians and citizens. So I want to make that point across. The major findings was evidence of consolidation. 10 parent companies at this point dominated the radio spectrum. Now it's much less. Deregulation has followed a few large radio companies to swallow many of the smaller ones. Together, these 10 parent companies controlled 2/3 of both listeners and revenue nationwide. And that's what happened here. And that the consolidation at one point was the most by Clear Channel. Clear Channel had grown from 40 stations to 1,240 stations, 30 times more than the congressional regulation previously allowed. No potential competitor owns even a quarter of the Clear Channel stations. At this point, it's around 800. And at that point, Clear Channel reached over 1/3 of the U.S. population with over 100 million listeners. Yeah. And then oligopolies controlled almost every geographic market. And it was dominated by 4 firms controlling 70% of market share or greater. Smaller markets consolidation is more extreme, and then virtually every music format is controlled by an oligopoly. In 20 of the 30 major music formats nationwide, 4 companies or fewer control over 50% of listeners. And that's what happened. And then the news part. A small number of companies control the news Americans hear on the radio. 4 parent companies control 2/3 of the nation's news format listeners. And the format consolidation leads to fewer gatekeepers. Aha. A small number of companies control what music is played on specific formats, coupled with a broad trend toward shorter playlists. This creates fewer opportunities for musicians to get on the radio. Further, overwhelming consolidation of these formats deprives citizens the opportunity to hear a wide range of music. 2002, even something more. Increased format variety does not ensure increased programming diversity. Okay. But there we are. These are the issues of consolidation and what happened. So now back to the story from the Prometheus Radio Project. Let's go and talk about this and the issues they had with the FCC and what they tried to do. Previously, when we talked about this before, and I wanted to go ahead and offer support about this story because when we did talk about it, I thought it was very important. Now, originally the story was going to be, the plan here by a Prometheus Radio Project was, as a petitioner, the Prometheus Radio Project argued the FCC did not adequately consider the effect of its rule changes that they would have on ownership of broadcast media by women and racial minorities. So again, it was a diversity issue, which is a good possible thing. In 2017, the FCC issued an order limiting altogether newspaper, broadcast, television, radio crossover ownership rules and making other substantial changes, and announcing its intention to adopt an incubator program, calling for comment on various aspects of the program. And the FCC then established that program in August 2018. And numerous parties filed petitions for review challenging various aspects of the FCC's order. U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Court found that the FCC did ostensibly consider this issue. Analysis was so insubstantial that it cannot provide a reliable foundation for the FCC's conclusions. And then there you go. Third Court vacated the bulk of the agency's actions over the past 3 years as arbitrary and capricious in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act, thus going to the Supreme Court this month and being judged today. So the issue, again, the holding was this. This is what they said. The FCC permissibly relaxed its media ownership rules because it considered the record evidence and reasonably concluded that the rules no longer serve the public interest. The FCC further reasonably explained that its rule changes were not likely to harm minority and female ownership. Bullshit. So what does this mean? This is what Gibson Dunn writes. The court's decision clears the way for consolidation in the broadcast and newspaper industry. eases the FCC's ability to further implement the deregulatory mandate of Section 202, enacting that mandate in 1996 to keep with pace of industry developments. The court applied the normal arbitrary and capricious standard in reviewing the FCC's order, despite the Solicitor General's call for special deference under the FCC's Section 202, and confirming that the Administrative Procedure Act, quote, imposes no general obligation on agencies to conduct or commission their own empirical or statistical studies, further making clear that nothing in the Telecommunications Act or any other statute requires the FCC to conduct its own empirical or statistical studies before exercising its discretion under the Section 202. If agencies lack perfect empirical data, which is not unusual, they generally need to only make a reasonable predictive judgment based on the evidence available. Because the FCC reasonably assessed effects on minority and female ownership, the court did not reach the alternative argument that Section 202 does not require the FCC to consider this factor at all. And the Justice Clarence Thomas wrote a separate concurrence to state the view that the FCC had no obligation to consider minority and female ownership. Well, okay, technically. But what needed to happen was, why are we still doing deregulation as it is? This consolidation that's happening, it's hurting altogether. But again, the voices that are out there, the FCC's just not, they allowed all this change to happen. And again, they can't turn it back around. Again, a 25-year-old rule, they can't change. Can't do anything about it. And that's what's going on. And it's unfortunate because, you know what? I got into this industry, my interest was really high. But then, unfortunately, the industry changed when I got in. It was changing as I got in. Unfortunately, in 1994 in college, and then right in the 1998 when I got into working professionally. And that's just what happened. And then seeing the area of Clear Channel and making their changes too, you know, and just the consolidation as it was going on as is, and how they handled things. It's a shame, but that's what they decided to do. And there's nothing being really done to fix all this, which is what's very unfortunate. And they're not going to do anything about it. They just don't care, you know? And I wish there was a better way to handle what happened here and what was being done to all of this. Again, the fact that I can go and complain about what's going on with the music industry, the radio industry in general, deregulation, and that goes also with all the media in general. The reason we are where we are at now, and why everybody's gone to other areas. Radio people have gone to podcasting, or any of the one to do radio at one point, they're doing podcasting now. If people wanted to be in music, they're not getting the music played on the radio. They'd rather get it done streaming. But then there are still some entities that will still make radio relevant enough that people have to matter. Again, why Billboard still has the methodology that radio airplay is so important. I mean, I understand, you know, the legacy of this, but I hope they will reconsider that streaming is much more important these days because of the amount of audience that is engaging right now. And it's not anything to what the personal people meters that are being used right now or audience metric testing that Nielsen's doing or that radio stations doing for their research. It's just contrived. It's not the same thing. And of course, no stats are going to be perfect, but we already know what's going on right there. That's where we are with all of this. And it's very unfortunate. So, and I'm trying to get all this right. Again, Supreme Court unanimously ruled to overturn the U.S. Third Court of Appeals ruling the FCC's 2017 changes to the broadcast ownership rules. They overturned the block. So here's what happened. Third Court of Appeals was trying to block, but then SEC and the others went ahead and took it to the Supreme Court, which it got overturned. And that's what actually happened here. So better context I'm getting right now from Radio Insight because I can't understand lawyers that much. So here's a better explanation of what happened. This is from Lance Venta over at RadioInsight.com. The appeals court ruling had prevented the FCC from implementing rule changes that would have eliminated the newspaper broadcast cross-ownership rule, preventing a company from operating a newspaper and a broadcast outlet in the same market. Eliminating the ownership cap so a television station no longer counts toward a limit of 8 radio stations, maximum of 5 on each band, that a company can own. But it's already too much. It's already happened. So again, trying to just do any little thing to kind of stop the continued decline, well, you can't do anything about that. The requirement that at least 8 independently owned television stations must remain in the market following the combination of 2 TV stations in the market. The ban against common ownership of 2 top 4 rated TV stations in the market to allow waivers on a case-by-case basis. Eliminating the JSA attribution rule requiring TV stations to count a station it sells more than 15% of ad time for under the ownership cap. The court's ruling we already talked about, and that's what they're doing right here. So yeah, it's, it just sucks. I don't like any of this, and nothing's going to change what's going to happen here going forward with the radio industry. They are where they are. There's no change that's going to happen. So anyway, we're going to leave it right there. That's everything I have for the program tonight. Keep it a little bit short. We'll come back again next week with another episode. And just keep in mind, I hope I made some kind of a good argument and a debate for people out there. And I hope you can be interested in actually commenting about it if you want to. Feel free to go and reach out to me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com. I hope you consider. And, I have all my social media places, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Just look for King of Podcasts. I'm there. Go ahead and find me. In the meantime, until next week, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.